Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. This is Lynn's Life, and today we are talking about how I may not be as safe as I thought. This episode, I wanted to talk about how I've been in reflection trying to figure out if I'm genuinely a safe space for others. I think sometimes we often like to believe that we can be, which I don't think that we can't. I think it's very possible to be a safe space for other people, but sometimes we're not actively practicing behaviors that create and cultivate that space. And as someone who has spent a lot of time in solitude, and when I say solitude, I mean actively not dating, not texting, not going on dates or anything like that with people, and just sitting in reflection, I think it definitely allows for you to kind of revive yourself, rejuvenate yourself again. But on the flip side of that is you can't avoid relationships forever. And I find that that is my biggest struggle is retreating and becoming a safe space within myself, but I'm learning how to be that safe space for other people. And I'm also learning that what I consider safe may not be what other people need in relationships that can be considered safe for them as well. One of the biggest obstacles that I feel like I'm facing right now, or that I have been facing, is that I learned so much therapy talk and things like that just because I'm in school and just in the research that I do. I oftentimes tend to avoid the work that goes hand in hand and the congruence that is necessary to actually like walk the walk that you're talking. And I told myself in 2026 I wanted to be a lot more intentional and um better about like doing as I say and meaning it. And I didn't realize how I would get caught up in this idea that like I'm not fully showing up, you know? Um, I get so hyper fixated on how can I do more? How can I show more? And rather than like taking a second to pause and really realize like what am I experiencing here and what is the root of all this? Um, Something that brought me to this epiphany, I guess you could say, is that in relationships that I've had with people, um platonic and romantic, I've noticed that I have had really bad issues with communication. And this is also something that I feel like my partners or people that I'm in relationship with in all forms of relationship, I've found that that has been something that has been like an ick for me when it came to them sometimes. And I started to sit with myself and realize that maybe I'm not being as great of a communicator as I think I am. And I started to reflect, and there was one conversation that has really like kind of torpedoed this thought process for me. And it's a recent conversation. And I realized after I responded that the person that was reaching out to me and in the conversation we were having, they were really just looking for reassurance. And instead of directly giving them that, which I essentially initially knew that they needed, but I allowed myself to get in my head to where I tried to play it off with ambiguity. Okay, why is that word tripping me up right now? But anyways, I tried to be vague or try to be kind of avoidant of being direct. And I recognize how important it is for me to stop doing that. Um, because afterwards I felt bad because then the conversation kind of went stale. And I was like, dang, we actually were communicating. And in a moment when they needed reassurance from me, instead of just offering them that reassurance, I decided to be vague and avoid that level of vulnerability and that closeness that they obviously were looking for. And it made me start to reflect on like a lot of my patterns that I have, and how if I want better, like I have to do better. And also, um, in order for me to exist in safe spaces, like I have to create a safe space for other people too. And to be very transparent, that is not very safe. Acting in that way is not very safe, because it sets a foundation that then leads to, well, I don't want to really have conversations with her, or not even just have conversations, but I don't want to address things that need to be addressed because she's going to avoid them. And these are feelings that I've had about other people myself. So it's very interesting how, like, something that bothers me that other people do, I also do as well. And it reminds me of something that my mom says, like, and my aunt, God rest her soul. But they would always tell us, like, what you don't like in others is typically what you don't like about yourself. And I can tell you how this person, that person, they were unsafe to me. But I think in this year, like, I want to really learn how I am being unsafe to others, because I don't think I'm a perfect person. And I don't want to fall into that perfectionism mindset that I've had for my whole life. And I also recognize how that mindset has been a huge detriment to me and my mentality as well, and just how I move around life. So I definitely am shedding that belief system, and just the way that I exist as a human. But yeah, like, I really just wanted to, talk about how a lot of times we are unsafe as well, especially as we're shedding these, as we're actively trying to shed these toxic habits and traits and the toxic things that have been normalized. And I'm trying to stop using the word toxic, because I do also recognize that it is a byproduct of, like, what exactly is, like, generational issues that have existed within our culture and things that we have normalized. So a lot of times, like, we are not fully aware that we're being toxic in the moment. And especially if you're not having that talk with yourself, those moments of introspection and holding yourself accountable, you'll never really see your behavior as toxic for real. And you'll just continue the cycle on. But for me, like, I'm very adamant about not wanting to continue the cycle. And I want to offer tools, or not even really tools, but just insight of, like, the things that I'm processing that allows me to stop the cycle within myself, because I don't know how my story can help someone else, but I'm never going to be afraid to tell it. And that's honestly what I hope for in creating this series, is just being very transparent about the things that I've been experiencing and I'm currently experiencing, or that I have experienced, and how I either am overcoming them, or I have overcome them. But this is something that I'm actively working on as I navigate, like, relationships with others. And, I'm going to be very honest. Like, I experienced, like, a pretty significant heartbreak. And it came during a time of the year where, like, I really had a lot on my plate. And that was, like, the one thing that was, like, something I was looking forward to. And it kind of just happened unexpectedly. And, as I reflected, I realized, like, a lot of my behavior during that time was not a best representation of who I am, or how I present myself to the world, or I try to present myself to the world. I feel like sometimes, like, we want to be perceived as, like, good people and things like that, but sometimes, like, our behaviors don't necessarily align with that. And I'm giving myself grace through that, but I also know how to hold myself accountable and know that I'm not perfect, and there are things that I definitely could work on. And for this year, I really hope that we all can come together and be sources to one another, to work through these issues, um, especially as someone who has dealt with a significant amount of trauma in my life. I definitely don't want to impose trauma on someone else. And also, I don't have kids, and I've been very intentional about not having kids. And it's for this exact reason, because I want my kids to get the best representation of myself and me as a parent. And while I know that, like, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, but I also don't want to set my child up to be put at a disadvantage in the world. And in order for me to do that, like, I have to actively heal the things that hurt me or have hurt me. And that's kind of what this process has been for me, especially in therapy. But yeah, because in being a safe space, I don't want to just be a safe space to myself. I don't want to just have a safe space within myself, but I also am learning to be a safe space to others. And I want to be a safe space to my children. And the foundation for that starts with self. But in the event that, I do have kids one day and things like that, I would like to have a safe space in my partner that I bring kids into this world with. And as I'm dating and just putting myself back out there, that's something that I'm being very intentional about, or at least I'm trying to be intentional about, because sometimes, like, it really is it's easier to fall back into old patterns than it is to create new ones. And I think that's like where I'm at right now. And that's what my challenge really is instead of falling back into the ways that I know that were unsafe and the behaviors that I know that, weren't a best representation of truly how I felt inside. We get so caught up in trying to play this game. At least I have in the past. And like, I always say how I really don't want to play the dating game, but I always end up playing the dating game. And I think in this next go round of me putting myself out there, like, I'm definitely trying to not do that. Like, of course, like, I'm not knocking anyone else's approach to dating. I think if you choose to date how you feel fulfilled, you do that. But for me, my goals are more for a long-term type of situation where, like, I just have a lifetime of happiness, rather than forcing myself in alignment with a system that I don't really feel aligned with. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm looking for. Like, in this next season, I really want to actively be a safe space, and I don't want to just say that I am, but I want to also practice that. And I think that comes with, for me personally, it's definitely going to come with a change in the way that I communicate with others, especially the ones that I care about. And especially if I'm saying that I want something, my actions and things like that have to be aligned. And a lot of it is attributed to fear. Like, it's scary putting yourself out there. It's scary, allowing someone to see, like, you for who you are. But what I've learned in the process is, like, my biggest regret has never been letting someone see me. I feel like the more that I practice that, the better I feel. I feel more fulfilled. Like, it becomes like whether they stay or they leave, like, I still feel proud of myself for allowing myself to be vulnerable, because that's something that I struggled with, and I do struggle with, is being vulnerable with others and not putting on a mask for the world. And being at home, it's something completely different. Like, I'm a different person. So that's something that I'm actively trying to work towards. And, I make these videos for the people that are actively trying to work towards something too. And just to give insight that, like, we are all humans. We're having human experiences, and it's okay. And sometimes our experiences don't make sense. Sometimes, like, we're trying to make sense of the experience. And There's a lot of power in trusting the process, and also connecting with people that understand that you are on a process and you are on a journey of becoming yourself, and they are too. And sometimes, like, we don't get it right the first time. We may not get it right the first few times. Like, it's a challenge, but being in partnership with people that understand that it's a dance, it's a a flow that we have to create, rather than just show up and just think that it's like gonna figure itself out. It's not gonna figure itself out. It never will. You have to do the work, and you have to be in partnership with people that are willing to do the work as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for watching, and all right, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and yeah, bye.